Alright, ladies and gentlemen, today we're learning how to multiply and divide those rational algebraic expressions and then simplify the results. So, numerical examples of multiplying and dividing fractions. Say we were doing 3/4 times 8/9. Okay? Option 1, you could multiply your numerators together, multiply your denominators together, and then figure out how to simplify that fraction. But what we know is we could also do something called canceling or cross-canceling. You're always allowed to simplify within each individual fraction, but 3/4 doesn't simplify, neither does 8/9. But we understand that these are eventually going to become one numerator and one denominator. So we're allowed to simplify 3/9 and make that 1/3. We're also allowed to simplify 8/4 and make that 2/1, and then multiply. 1 times 2 is 2, 1/3 is 3. We're allowed to do that. Okay, so that's basically what you're going to be doing here too, is you're going to want to look to simplify before you start multiplying everything together. Otherwise, you're just going to make a ton more work for yourself. Okay. The only thing that is different with dividing fractions is if you are doing 1/2 divided by 3/2, before you can do any simplifying or cross-canceling or canceling or anything like that, you need to change it to multiplication. You do that by flipping or taking the reciprocal of the second fraction and changing the operation to multiplication. At that point, you are allowed to cancel. Okay, then that's okay. So, basically two big things here. One, you don't want to multiply everything together and then try to simplify. You want to try to simplify as much as you can from the beginning. Okay, and the other thing is, if it's division, your first step has to be change to multiplication and take the reciprocal of the second fraction. Okay, so now let's look at some actual examples. Again, this first one you really should be able to do. It's pretty much review from last time. So what we're seeing here is, since this is all multiplication, 8 times x times 12 times y, we've got all multiplication here. We can take any of these individual parts as if they were one individual fraction and simplify them. So y over y just cancels completely. So does x over x. 8/16 is 1/2. And 12/3 is 4/1. And then my 4/2, I can simplify again just to 2. It's all just a big 2. There's a whole lot of canceling there. Okay. Now, if you miss some of your canceling, you might end up with a 4/2 or something like that at the end, but eventually you'll get there. Okay, that's a relatively straightforward example. Let's take a look at one with division now. Try this one on your own. Don't forget what you're supposed to do with division first. Try this one on your own, though. Pause and then come back, please. All right, so I get 40x over 17y times 51x over 30y. Yeah, x's will not cancel this time, but there's a lot of simplifying I can do. 40/30 is same thing as 4/3. 17 and 51 is 1 and 3. And then I'm allowed to cancel in the same fraction too, so 3 and 3 cancel out to 1 and 1. So on the top, I have 4 and 2 x's, that's x squared. On the bottom, I have 1 and 2 y's, or just y squared. I should get 4x squared over y squared. All right, let's take a look at some ones that involve, that may involve some factoring. Okay, C. We don't have a whole lot of factoring here, but we do have some. Okay, so what I want you to do before you even start this problem, because this is where I've seen a lot of people have trouble in the past, I want you to circle the part or parts that I need to factor. Okay, circle the places where factoring needs to occur. Pause and then come back. Okay, the only place you should have circled is this one. That's factored already, so is that. This, while it looks like there's addition and subtraction there, okay, I don't have to factor that. That's already in a factored form. Remember, x minus y squared is just x minus y times x minus y. So that's already in a factored form. I don't need to factor that. I do need to factor the numerator of the right fraction. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor that. Everything else I'm going to rewrite and keep exactly the same. I'm going to change my x minus y squared to x minus y times x minus y because I think it'll make this next step a little more clear. X minus y squared is a difference of squares, so I'm going to factor it just like that. And now canceling time. X minus y over x minus y, that can cancel. 3 and 12 can cancel to 1 and 4. X to the 4th over x is just x to the 3rd. So, my final answer is x cubed times x plus y over, I'm going to put the 4 first. Doesn't really matter though. And that's my final answer. Now, your book, when it's giving you answers, okay, might give you something like this. So what you need to make sure that you're checking before you jump and say, oh no, my answer was wrong. I would take both of these answers. I actually almost prefer just to leave answers like this because it shows that, hey, there was nothing left here for me to cancel. There was no more work left for me to do. Okay, but be aware that your book might multiply things back together after canceling has occurred. Okay, you've got one left. Try this on your own. I'm just going to circle one thing just so you don't miss it, because otherwise that's going to make life really challenging. Okay, so the key is you have to factor everything completely before you start canceling. So factor everything completely, then you can start canceling. Pause and then come back. All right, I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. I'm going to factor the left-hand fraction, and then I'm going to factor the right-hand fraction and flip it, all in the same step. Okay, so there's a GCF of 3 here. And I'm left with x squared plus 2x plus 3. X squared plus 2x plus 3 does not factor any further. So that's all I've got there. I had actually written that over there under the assumption I was going to need to do one more factoring step. But there aren't two numbers that multiply to positive 3 and add to positive 2. My denominator here, it does factor a little bit. There is a GCF there, so I need to make sure I take that out. Next, I'm going to flip the other fraction. So I'm going to change it to multiplication. I'm going to flip that fraction over, take the reciprocal of it. 2x plus 3 goes on top. And I'm going to factor what was the numerator, but is now the denominator, my other fraction. Now I can look to cancel. Okay, again, I have it written as all multiplication, so it's this times this whole thing, because I gotta assume that's in parentheses there. Okay, so I'm only allowed to cancel if entire things match, okay, or numbers if they simplify nicely for me. None of my numbers simplify actually, but 2x plus 3 matches, and actually, even though it didn't factor any further, this whole parentheses matches, so I am allowed to cancel that. So I'm just left with a 3 on top and a 2 times 4 or an 8 on the bottom. Hopefully you got that. Yeah, a lot of canceling involved there, but we got to make sure that we're factoring correctly and we're factoring completely. Hopefully you're seeing why that's going to be pretty important this chapter now. That's it for this one. Again, big things to remember. You've got to factor first. Okay, and you've got to understand what's being multiplied by what and make sure that the entire thing matches before you cancel.